Hello, it's time for our tropical forecast update. We've had a lot of activity going on the last 24 hours, and so let's just get right to it. So now we have three systems we're looking at. We have Fred, which is making landfall or just made landfall. We have Grace, it's continuing to organize somewhat. Now TD8 just became Henri, which is H-E-N-R-I, so everyone's going to want to say Henry, but I think it's Henri, and it sounds more like Henri to me, but anyway, that's the one we're not going to be too concerned about. Let's come on into Fred, the closest one, the one making landfall today. Winds got up to 65 miles per hour before making landfall. Now think about that for a second. It almost became a hurricane. If it had another day out in the Gulf of Mexico, it could have been stronger, but it is producing a lot of rain, and yeah, it's producing winds, 65, really strong winds as well, so it's turned out to be a pretty big storm. So just to the east of Panama City is where it's made landfall, and so you're seeing the backside of it from Pensacola. Destin on the east side is still drawing in the showers, so a good portion of Florida is seeing that, but by far the heaviest rainfall is here into the Panhandle from Alfred moving up towards the north in Dothan, and then Albany off to the east. So this is going to continue to cause some problems there. Now taking a look at the latest conditions, now winds at 60 miles per hour, moving to the northeast at 9. The forecast keeps it going in that direction and will continue onward for the next several days ahead. Now that's Fred. No impact whatsoever really on us here in southeast Texas. Grace, of course, is kind of a little more problematic, right? Because we know it's going to go into the Gulf of Mexico, but honestly, doesn't look like it's going to be a problem for southeast Texas either. Currently, winds are at 35 miles per hour. Now, what's different today compared to yesterday and the last couple of days is that everything is shifted south. And at this point, south is good for us here in southeast Texas. I'll show you why here in just a second. But it is moving to the west-northwest at 13 miles per hour. So yesterday's forecast had it really slugging it out, almost going directly over Cuba. Okay, that would have torn the whole system apart completely, which would have also been good for us. But here's the forecast now. Now it's going to be south. So from Jamaica to Cuba, it's actually going to be over open water. And because of that, it's going to go from tropical depression back to a tropical storm. Now, having said that, most likely not going to become a hurricane at this point, simply because upper level winds are not that conducive. And then watch what happens after this. It interacts with the Yucatan Peninsula and now could become a hurricane once it gets into the Gulf of Mexico, which again, that's always the problem, right? Once it gets into the Gulf, it gets away from all that landfall, it has time to become a hurricane. So Category 1 hurricane by Friday, 1 p.m. going into Mexico. Now this is also really, really important for southeast Texas. Look at the cone. The cone is very small here, and of course, we're 4 or 5 days away. We expect the cone to be wider here. But even at this point, the widest edge of the cone puts this south of Brownsville, and then of course further to the south. So none of Texas is in the cone. Now, doesn't mean that we wouldn't have any impacts. Now, for us, it wouldn't give us much impact at all because it's just way too far to the south. Other than, I think it would probably send some extra swells, elevated tides, maybe that sort of thing, but we probably wouldn't even get that rain out of it. Now, Brownsville would be a different story if this holds true. Now, how confident are we about this? Well, let's take a look. Here's the computer models. Now, what's good about this scenario is when we have strong elements like very strong high pressure, big cold front, big things that are good, strong elements in weather, it's easier for the models to forecast. When you have things that are kind of not really a strong weather front, not a big front, a little front, we have a little bit of high pressure, it's kind of dying over here. Those little things is when the modeling has a hard time. Well, notice how the models are really close together, meaning high confidence for this first part. And by the way, that's the important part for us. What changes our forecast is if this were to change down here. Once it gets into the Gulf, we're in pretty good shape because this time of year, things tend to drive into Mexico. The only thing, this is not going to happen. The only thing that could happen for us is if it decided to stall down here in the Yucatan and sit there for several days and then slowly come to the north. But that's not going to happen. That's not in the cards for this one. But that's why I look at this and I'm trying to say, okay, what could be the worst case scenario? That would be it, and that's nearly impossible. That's not going to happen. So it's going to come in, it's going to interact with the Yucatan, it's going to become a hurricane and make landfall into Mexico, missing us completely in southeast Texas. So once again, maybe counting our lucky stars, doing our anti-hurricane dance, I don't know, whatever it is we're doing, it's working. Let's keep it up. Okay, now Henri just formed, just barely formed in this just even a few minutes ago. This is another one we're not going to worry about at all because it's a fish storm. It's just going to stay out here in the water. So Bermuda, in fact, just kind of go around Bermuda. At this point, also looks like this will possibly stay as a tropical storm the whole time. I wouldn't mind if the rest of the storms are like this one, just sort of sitting out there in the Atlantic, and then the upper level winds will take it off to the east. Now, of course, keeping score, where are we at with our names? So I'm going to have to click this off now. Henri is the storm that we have now. The next one would be Ida. So we are definitely moving to the height of hurricane season, obviously. I mean, we've got 3 things going on right now. And at this point, I expect things to continue to be active for the next several weeks. We don't even get to the peak of hurricane season until after the first week of September. So everything is kind of on course. So having said all of these things, though, for the Houston area, for southeast Texas, and most of Texas for that matter, nothing pointed at us at this point. But please, now is really a good time to be prepared, to get prepared, check your supplies and things, because if something changes later on in the next several weeks, you're ready for whatever happens. So it's much easier to do your hurricane gear shopping now when nothing's pointed at us than when something changes later on. And we hope that doesn't happen, but it's always better to be safe, not sorry. Okay, so that's the update for today. Tomorrow, we won't be talking about Fred anymore because it'll be gone. We'll be focusing a little bit more on Grace and Henri, and then we'll also take a look out by Africa to see what's next or could be the next possible thing to develop. We'll see you next time.